Hey everyone, in this installment of Q&A with Wall Street, I'm going to look at Palantir and conduct a stock analysis of Palantir in its question and answer session with Wall Street. So let's jump right in to these interesting questions and answers.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.
All right, so the first question comes from Andrew saying, given the significant increase in demand for AIP, could the management team elaborate on the advancements made in formulating monetization strategy for these offerings? A good question to be sure. So first, the CRO, the Chief Revenue Officer, Ryan Taylor, jumps in and says, look, you're right to comment that demand is off the charts for AIP. We closed 103 deals in the Q4 alone, worth over 1 million each. The excitement over AIP and over Palantir is unlike anything I've seen in the 14 years I've been here. Wow, that's saying a lot. So in 14 years, demand for Palantir's products and services has never been this exciting. So that's certainly good news for Palantir stock investors. So in October, we set the goal of executing 500 boot camps for top of funnel AIP. The boot camps are a way for Palantir to generate interest in its AIP product and just create some customer list, a pipeline of potential customers. So already they exceeded that with over 560 boot camps just about 4 months later. And so that's leading to results. In US commercial, they generated 70% year over year revenue growth. In Q4, they generated 55% increase in customer count. And I've been saying with Palantir for a while now that the big opportunity with Palantir is in US and international commercial business. There are more businesses in the world than governments. And so you want to gain traction. That's the growth opportunity. Palantir already has a great relationship with governments domestically. They've got a great foothold in that market segment. The opportunity for growth for Palantir remains in commercial, and you're seeing this nicely in the latest quarter. This latest product offering seems to be gaining traction, and that's been great news for Palantir. It's been one of the reasons why a couple of months ago I upgraded Palantir stock to a buy. It's because the traction they gained in this market. So boot camps that are quickly converting to paying customers, or its expansion of existing customers, or customers that they were maybe engaged with for a while, and now with the introduction of AIP, that whole process has been accelerated. So what the Chief Revenue Officer is saying is previously it was taking us a lot longer to convert someone into a customer. Perhaps we were starting talks, and those talks were slowly progressing and eventually perhaps turning into a sale. Now, those conversations are moving along much more quickly, and they're converting into sales much more quickly. That's good news on two fronts, right? Number one, you're closing the sale, which is always good news. And number two, when those sales are closing faster, that's less cost to serve, right? Because you're spending less of your resources meeting with this customer to try to close the sale. If it's closing faster, then it's less cost to serve and you're generating more profit on those sales. So that's great news for Palantir as well. And management saying that we barely touched that addressable market and we're really only at the beginning. Only at the beginning. So it's just getting started for Palantir. All right, the next question asks about their Fed Start program and how that's seen as of late. So Fed Start, if you're not aware, is Palantir's way of helping other businesses get into the DoD, the Department of Defense. So yes, they say Fed Start has always been a hit. There's been 100 billion of capital that's flowed into defense tech community at large. And what they're saying is no one can afford the 2 years and $2 million it takes to achieve accreditation so that you can get contracts from the Department of Defense. And I think what the CTO meant to say is instead of no one can afford, I think what he meant to say is very few businesses can afford, because there are some businesses that can afford the 2 years and $2 million, just not all businesses. So Palantir is helping by bringing folks to the Department of Defense market. And they plan to release an IL6 Fed start at the end of the second quarter, and then Fed ramp high at the end of the third quarter or early Q4. So this is a program they're going to ramp up in 2024, starting with the second quarter and then increase in the third and fourth quarter. So that's going to be interesting to see. This hasn't been a massive market opportunity for Palantir, and I don't suspect this to be as big an opportunity as perhaps AIP is, but it's nice to see this gaining traction and increasing the adoption and increasing innovation in this area. Right. The next question asks, is your greatest competitor still the potential customer's own IT department, or has that changed? So the CTO jumping in and saying, that certainly used to be the case. We certainly used to feel that way. But when you look at boot camps, you look at how much charisma AIP has with IT, and the fact that we're winning IT with Apollo, with the OSDK, with capabilities like Marketplace, it's not the case anymore. Interesting. IT has become some of our biggest champions. But what I think is exciting about generative AI is it's blowing up all of that. It's been a big reset button, the whole map, the whole architecture. It's all up for grabs, and we're working very closely with IT to write that map, to write the architecture that's actually delivering all these operational use cases for these customers. That's interesting. So now it looks like the IT department is helping Palantir gain traction inside corporations, inside businesses, which seems interesting, right? A lot of the criticism with artificial intelligence and these AI services is that it's taking away from some people's jobs. There's going to be more automation, more reliance on AI, and less reliance on people. And that's, somewhat why Palantir used to have so much friction with customers' IT departments. They were hesitant to recommend or work with Palantir because they were fearful that their jobs would be lost if Palantir came in and started offering enhancements and improvements that led to less need for personnel. And to hear that now IT is working with Palantir and recommending Palantir is interesting. Now, this might not be the whole IT department that's thrilled with working with Palantir. It might be just the leaders of the IP department that are now saying, you know what, I've got to implement this program because it's going to make my department more effective, more cost effective, more value additive, instead of trying to fight it and save my jobs and save the people on my team, and et cetera, et cetera. So this is an interesting dynamic here. The CEO, Alex Karp, jumps in to add, he says, you go to these meetings and they'll often be the IT person telling the CEO, like, look, we have no choice. We need to install this quickly. There's a cultural shift in the US. They've got to show themselves, their company, their workers, the whole, that they're going to get revenue either driving or quality of revenue driving results quickly. And they are almost exclusively now our friends. This is interesting. It's the IT person, right? The CEO saying the IT person. So probably the chief IT person going in and saying, look, we got to implement this because it's getting expensive to run my department, and I'm maybe concerned that my whole department's going to be cut. So instead of fighting against it, maybe I'll work with Palantir, adopt this technology, and make my department more value additive. Interesting, really interesting that now the IT department is working with Palantir and not fighting against it. However, I would still speculate on my behalf, right? This isn't what Palantir is saying. This is just my assumption, and that is that the IT department would still be hesitant to work with Palantir, the lower ranks of the IT department, because individual employees are going to feel that if Palantir services, AI services get adopted, then their jobs could be at risk. And so they're going to be cautious and skeptical of Palantir, even if the leaders may not be, because the leaders, of course, would like to save money. They would like to see the department become more profitable. And if that means getting the same amount of value for less cost, then they may choose to go with that, right? And with labor, the price of wages going up so much in the last several years, companies are looking to Palantir and services like Palantir and saying that could be a huge advantage to lower our cost and maintain the same amount of service, maintain the same amount of value from the department. So really interesting to hear, really interesting questions here that were asked, and I'm glad we went through this. I found a lot about what's happening inside Palantir through this question and answer session, and I hope you did too. Before I let you go, let me tell you about the greatest deal on YouTube. With just a click of a button, you can get free financial analysis from a professor with decades of investing experience. So what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you again soon.